Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Masterverse Revelation, Savage He-Man and Orko. This $30 deluxe release is interestingly a 2-pack, which hasn't been done in Revelation so far, of He-Man in his more Hulk-like primordial form, which comes about from him summoning the power of Grayskull without the Sword of Power to channel it. Also gives him a bunch of, cool accessories from the show, big old battle-worn axe, a spear, and it even comes with Orko, based on his appearance post-time skip, so basically after the first episode. So, it's his classic appearance, but it's really more ragged looking. He's pretty beat up. As magic leaves Eternia, Orko's just kind of fading away. So this represents that. Now, while I will say there's easily enough in here to justify the $30 price point, I do have to express some disappointment with the route they chose to go. This He-Man, while clearly bigger than the standard He-Man figure, is noticeably smaller than his on-screen counterpart, especially when it comes to, how just bulky his muscles are. He's quite lean in comparison. I think this would have been better served as just being Savage He-Man and making him much bigger, more, Incredible Hulk-like. And then Orko, he could have been sold, a different way. I'm thinking maybe a 2-pack of like his ragged form and then his more ascended form from the, final episode. I think that probably would have made a lot more sense because for the entirety of Savage He-Man's existence, Orko's not even alive. He's dead. He's not even there. So, I don't know. This is what they chose to go with. It's not what I would have done, but I'm also not, a marketing guy for a toy company. Maybe they know better than I do. Anyway, if you've seen my reviews before, you know this goes. We're going to take a look at the toy's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see the figures themselves, check out their posability, their accessories, action features, all that. Naturally, I'll be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So the figures come in one of your large deluxe size boxes, and I don't think the deluxes are all in the exact same size box. I think it varies based on what's actually in there. Pretty sure, this box is not the exact same one that, like, Skelegod came in. Unfortunately, I don't still have the Skelegod box to actually check, but I don't think his was nearly as wide. It was probably, deeper. But you can see here, you got your Savage He-Man on the left, being not only a reference to the character on screen, but also the original official design of He-Man as seen in, like, the earliest mini-comics from the Masters of the Universe line. He-Man wasn't always a prince named Adam that used a sword to transform. He used to just be a very Conan-like character, a savage, who was just, pure of heart and, powerful warrior, and he was chosen by the Eternian goddess to wield the Sword of Power and defend Castle Grayskull. So this is kind of a double homage to all that. And despite him never wielding the sword in this form, he does come with a power sword, which may or may not actually be bigger than the standard one. We'll have to take a look at that. It seems bigger, but it could be my eyes playing tricks on me. He also comes with this big war axe that he actually pulls down out of the throne room during a fight, and then a spear he's seen using later. And then again, we get Orko. Very similar to his Origins toy, he does come on this clear stand, so he's not just kind of like sitting there on the ground. He is, hovering. Instead of a translucent purple, the stand is just now all clear. So, what's in here I really like. Even if I don't necessarily agree with, the choice of contents, I think what we get looks really good. So on this side, you just get the name Savage He-Man. He's the most powerful primate in the universe. I mean, that's interesting wording. I guess the implication is he's not fully human in this form. I guess he's like evolutionarily regressed in a way. I don't know. It's an interesting bit of wording. Not sure if I'm going to use that in the thumbnail or not because it's kind of silly. On this side, you get some really cool artwork. You get Orko here, right in the middle, and then you get kind of a portrait of Savage He-Man and then a full body shot of him. Now this is what he looks like in the show. Like overly muscle bound, very, very big. That's what I would have liked to see on this figure. I mean, the figure's cool, but it really doesn't look like this. I'd rather have just a $30 toy that looks like this, that looks like he could, put a herding on Skelegod. Then on the back, we get some other artwork, which is very similar. Again, very, very muscle-bound. He's also very hairy, which is a detail that is left out on the toy. And you can see here, specifically, he's got some stubble too, right? He's not very clean-shaven, which, again, because they didn't put any kind of hair details, he looks like he's clean shaven. Makes him look a little more prim and proper than he probably should. Now for our flavor text on the back, it says Savage He-Man, the most powerful primate in the universe. For years, it was assumed that Prince Adam could only call upon the power of Grayskull using the Sword of Power. But what happens if he did not raise aloft his magic sword and still say, by the power of Grayskull? The answer, Savage He-Man. A combination of primal rage and all the power in the universe, He-Man tears through Eternia in an uncontrolled rampage, leaving his friends hoping that Adam is in there somewhere. So that description is really taken directly from what happens in the show. And then we get some cross-sells here on the bottom. We get Savage He-Man himself, which, again, why do you cross-sell a toy on its own packaging? I never got that. And then you get some Wave 3 figures. You get Fisto, Andra, Skelegod, and Stinkor. You also get the deluxe figure Faker, who was released early through Target, but I think is also being released again as part of this greater wave. And then Triclops, who's another deluxe figure, who I have on the way. So that's pretty exciting. So pretty good selection of cross-sells here, and a very good assortment of characters, I think. Alright, so we've seen this packaging. It is all very cool. But now, more importantly, we gotta open it up and see what's inside. Okay, now we can see our figures out of the box. And I've got He-Man's accessories laid out in front of him, the spear, axe, power sword, and hands. I did confirm that the sword actually is the same size as the one that comes with the regular He-Man and Skelegod and all that. So I'll be getting a look at that to show you a comparison. I've also, unfortunately, been able to confirm that our Savage He-Man, despite what it looked like in the box, he's the exact same height as the regular He-Man. So, man, that just really makes me double down on my take that he should have been a standalone figure and a big figure. The fact that Skelegod is now going to tower over this guy because he's just the size of regular He-Man, just more naked, man, like, that is so unfortunate. Like, they really sacrificed this guy's screen accuracy just so they could plug Orko in there, I guess. So I don't know how many people are actually going to buy this toy as an actual reference to the show and the big, rage monster that's contained in there. And maybe more so as just a reference to the very old He-Man artwork where he's more, primitive looking without all the fancy getup. So yeah, that is unfortunate. Alright, when we talk posability here, Orko, he's very similar to the Origins toy. The base has like all the same points of articulation, right? 2 different places where it bends, rotates here at the base. You can rotate him on the base itself. You can even unplug him from the base if you want to, but there's really not much going on up there. It's completely empty. So, really no reason to unplug him from the base. His head is on a ball joint, which is nice. Shoulders are universal. And his scarf actually sits kind of loosely here. It's not really attached to anything, just kind of sits there. Now, one thing that's unfortunate is this new Orko actually has 4 less points of articulation than the old one. He's got no bend in his elbows and no wrist articulation. It's just in the shoulders. So he's actually really a bit of a step back from the Origins toy as far as, complexity engineering. Now, maybe it's just because of how scrawny his arms are, without the big sleeves to kind of flesh them out. They're very, very stick thin. Maybe they were worried about breakage, because that is a very small joint to have to engineer in there. So that really solidifies him as just like a pack-in piece and not a very good standalone figure. Our Savage He-Man, he has all your standard, 30 points of articulation for a Masterverse toy. Universal shoulders, bicep swivel, double bend elbows, and like most of the Masterverse toys, you really got to work his joints when you first open them, because a lot of the time with these double joints here, there'll be one of the 2 joints that just really doesn't want to bend, like this one, and you got to kind of like break it free a little, but just be careful when you do it. Make sure you're applying pressure in the right place. But the arms do fully articulate. He's got that cool ball joint there in the torso, full waist articulation, universal hips, thigh swivel, double bend knees, like so. Instead of a boot swivel, he just doesn't have boots, so he's got like a mid-shin swivel. Ankle rocking, which is a bit tighter than normal. It's like ratcheted. And he's got that rotation too. So, I mean, as far as articulation, everything's fine. One thing you'll notice, though, is he can't look up. Like, if you have him standing completely straight up, he just looks down. And you can pull his head up a little tiny bit. That's about it. Which, I mean, he is supposed to be kind of haunched over a bit. But the fact that they didn't engineer a way to make him be able to look straight forward, I think is a real shortfall there. Because in order to get him to like look forward at the camera, you gotta have him doing this weird like flame toys, you know, pose where he's just kind of thrusting his hip out like that. And it's weird. It's really weird. So that's unfortunate. I think they could have given him that one little extra bit of articulation there in the neck so he's not perpetually looking down like that. Oh well, that's what we get. Now, one thing I do like about this new He-Man, he's got these big old bear mitts for hands here. These big open hands. He's got some weird black speck on this finger. Where that's about, I could probably get that off. But you can see, you know, big old meat paws there. Make him look, you know, like he's just seething with rage, which is cool. Unfortunately, you know, when you do that, he can't hold any weapons. So, if you want, you can always unplug him. Give him a more standard weapon holding hand. And I've noticed they're closed a little bit more tightly than like the regular He-Mans. So you may have to squeeze a little tighter to get some things in there. Like a sword. Just try not to overbend the fingers when you squeeze the weapon in there. But we'll have him hold his sword first just so you see what that looks like. I mean, it's, again, not canon for him to hold this at all, so I guess you can just have him pick it up and look at it curiously like this. You know, he has no idea what this is because he's got like a big old monkey brain thing going on here. Okay, now we get a comparison shot with the regular Revelation He-Man, who I reviewed just previously to this. And you can see they're the same height. Almost exactly the same height. In fact, like, I was under the impression that this guy was mostly new tooling and stuff. No, he really isn't. Most of his body is just the He-Man body. The legs, most of the arms, the chest, all that. Obviously, the boots are swapped out for bare feet, and it's got a different loincloth area, but yeah, very similar toys. That's disappointing. That truly is disappointing. Some major cosmetic differences you'll notice. One, obviously, he's much dirtier looking than the regular He-Man, right? You got all these little paint, like kind of airbrush details that make him look either dirty or scratched up or something. And you'll notice his hair is a brighter shade of blonde than the He-Man figure. In fact, that does line up with the cartoon a little bit better. He-Man's hair in the Revelation cartoon is pretty bright blonde, like the old cartoon. So this guy, his hair is actually a little bit too dark. Now, we talked about the power sword, right? So, see, here's the one that our standard He-Man wields. Here's our new one, and they're nearly identical. The new one uses a slightly lighter shade of brown for the grip, but other than that, they're very similar. Which would make sense, honestly. You would expect the sword to look pretty much the same regardless of who's holding it. So I actually don't mind that part at all. But now it's just kind of silly that, you know, in comparison to this guy, it's still the same size. It should look like a butter knife, you know, in the hands of Savage He-Man, but because he's so tiny, it doesn't. Also, for anybody wondering, this He-Man can wield the axe accessory that comes with Savage He-Man, if you want to see that. You take it out. However, I will say his grip is a bit looser. You can see his hand's a little more open than this one. So you could go ahead and put it in there. It'll more or less stay, but you see you got some wiggle room here. So you got to be kind of mindful of how you pose this guy. But if you did want to give him the axe to help recreate, you know, the classic He-Man look from the old toy, you can do that, though it's a bit big for him. Honestly, you could probably have some fun customizing these guys by swapping out different parts on them to create kind of like your perfect vintage or, you know, old mini comic He-Man look. Some kind of cross between the Savage and the regular He-Man. I'm sure it's doable, and I'm sure there are some people out there that will do that. Here's another comparison shot, this time with the Origins He-Man. And you may notice I'm cheating a little bit because this is the new head version that I haven't actually finished reviewing yet. But I wanted to use the most, you know, vintage-looking take on him possible. You know, something that's as close to his Lords of Power take as I can get without actually owning that PowerCon exclusive set. But this is mostly to compare the axe, and you can see just how similar they are. Biggest difference is that the new axe doesn't have like the little ball accent on the top of the handle, but for the rest of it, it is very similar. Now, the new one does have a bit of an extended handle. They both get this little kind of hourglass shaped thing here, and then his handle goes down a little bit more and includes like a special grip piece, very similar to that of the sword. So there's that. It's also actually missing, there's a ball accent on the bottom of this one that's not present on this guy either. So there's some give and take there, but, you know, at a squint, these look like they are the same axe design. That is kind of the intent, right? It's sort of a more realistic update of this old toy here. So I think it works out pretty well, and even though this axe is maybe a little big for the size of this figure, it does still scale a little bit better than this one would. So I like it overall. I love the like notches cut into it and the silver color of the blade and all that. They did a good job making it look just more updated, more detailed. All right, here's our group shot with Chaos from Final Fantasy. I mean Skelegod. And you can see he's a good deal bigger than our Savage He-Man. When in fact, I believe in the cartoon it was the other way around. Savage He-Man was actually bigger than Skeletor when he stood upright. Or sorry, Skelegod. So it really doesn't work. Like, it bothers me so much that they made this guy so much smaller than his adversary and really didn't do much to make him look like the giant brute that he's supposed to be. He's just dirty He-Man. So unfortunately, you're not going to have a proper foil to this monstrosity right here. If you try to make them fight each other, it'll look like he's just being attacked by like a crazy homeless person. So, you know, that's probably the biggest letdown of this whole set, is just the fact that he's really nowhere as big as he should be, because he should be able to stare this guy down. He should be able to like walk right up to him, look down, and stare him right in the eyes, and that's just not the case here. In fact, because of his head articulation, he can't even walk up to him and look up and look him in the eyes. He'll just look down at his, I don't know, his abs, I guess. Admire his abdominals? I don't know. So, yeah, this just kind of highlights how much more this toy should have been, and the fact that it really should have been a standalone release, like Skelegod was, for $30, instead of coming packaged with Orko. I feel like Orko just took all the budget away from this guy needed to make him, you know, properly done. Now for our final comparison, we see Orko with his Origins counterpart, and the duality between these two is really striking, right? You have the colorful, youthful innocence of the Orko we know from the 80s cartoon, and then you just have this beat-down, tired old wizard who's just kind of straining under the weight of his own failures and the loss of his best friend, and I mean, he just looks like a mess. So these two, more than most of the other like Origins and Revelation figures, look like they could be the same character, like through and through. This is just what he looks like when he's all beat down. Now, interestingly, it may not look it from, you know, the footage here, these two are virtually the same size. This guy just looks smaller because he has a much smaller base, not just, you know, as far as the diameter at the bottom, but the little armature thing's not as tall either. So it makes him look a bit smaller, but they are actually the same size. Now, as I mentioned, the old one's actually more articulated because he gets the elbow bend, he gets the wrist articulation, whereas this guy just gets in the elbow. So, you know, it's unfortunate. The trade-off is that he gets some, you know, much nicer texturing on the fabrics that look more realistic, and, you know, just better sculpting overall, I'd say. Plus, I do like the new take on Orko with the more cat-like eyes rather than just like the straight cartoony yellow and black eyes. I think that was a pretty nice design update. Now, if you're wanting your new Orko to sit a little bit taller, I have some good news. The stands for these two use connectors that are almost the exact same shape. Not quite the same. One's kind of a little taller, but they are close enough, and you can switch them without any real issue. It's a little bit of a tighter fit putting the old base on the new Orko, but if you really want to swap them around, have at it, because you can do it, and it works just as well. So, you know, you could get one that's sitting up a little higher than the other. Actually, you know what? I'll take back what I said about the bases causing the height difference. It's really the connection point. It's because the new Orko, he gets connected way up here, like by his shoulders, whereas this one has more of a solid bottom. So that's actually what makes a difference, because you can see the new one still sits up higher. In fact, this might make him sit even higher than he did before. So that's interesting. Just two different ways that he's connected here make all that height difference. And this completes our look at the new Savage He-Man and Orko 2-pack. Overall, I will say I'm disappointed in the set. Not so much, you know, at what's there, but what isn't there. I think it would have been better served as, instead of a 2-pack, just being one big Savage He-Man, something that, fills the whole package for 30 bucks. You can leave out the power sword. You really don't need it. And you could have had something that looks more screen accurate and looks like it could go toe-to-toe with Skelegod. This isn't that, right? It's regular sized He-Man, just dirtier looking with longer hair and a new loincloth. He's barefoot. So, I mean, for what he is, he's fine. He really is reminiscent of the old artwork and stuff. His accessories are good. The power sword it just is what it is. It's the power sword, no difference. The axe I really like, and I love the details put into it. And I like the spear as well. I think the spear is a really cool weapon. And then when it comes to Orko, I think Orko is also great. He's very well detailed. He's got the nice fabric patterning. He's got a lot of paint on him. My only real complaint is the lack of arm articulation below the shoulder, but at the same time, that may not have been doable with how small his arms are, so maybe it's for the best that they are more static. Either way, I think Orko would have been better served in, a different multi-pack. Maybe something with like a Prince Adam in it, or, maybe other forms of Orko, right? You could have like regular Orko, fallen Orko here, and then like redeemed white robe Orko. I'm still waiting on some version of that to make it a plastic form. So, I dislike it for what's not there. But as far as what's here, I think it's all fine. I think the He-Man could, have been served by getting a hinge installed in like the base of his neck so he could look up better instead of always looking toward the ground. I could see why they didn't do it, because they would have to cast an entirely new upper, abdominal area, which, that's going to be a big budget thing. But maybe if they just didn't include the power sword here, they could have put the budget toward that instead, because I think he would have been better served. He doesn't need a power sword. He's Savage He-Man. He wouldn't even know what to do with it. Yeah, I think I can, pretty moderately recommend this. I think it's a good set. It's just not what I was looking for. So as long as you can get over the fact that Savage He-Man isn't really the character from the show, per se, I think you'll find some enjoyment out of it. And for 30 bucks, it's a pretty decent deal. Of course, that is just my take on this 2-pack. Now I want to know what you all think of it. Do you see a place in your collection for these? Does this appeal to you at all? Do you like the whole Savage He-Man concept? How much of, if you do like it, how much do you mind that he doesn't look very screen accurate? Or are you not interested, either because you don't collect Revelation, or maybe you don't like Orko, or you don't like the Savage He-Man concept, or maybe the fact that it isn't a giant He-Man is what really kind of does it for you. You just don't want to pick it up. Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Masterverse Revelation Savage He-Man with Orko. And with all that said, I will see you next time.